There's no denying that the shoe monster in the first Little Nightmares game is the least recognised character in the entire franchise. Its physical appearance is non-existent, its purpose to the moor is unknown, how it even got on the moor, we'll never know. It has just remained a complete mystery. When Little Nightmares was released, a website for official character descriptions was released alongside it. This included rather brief and pretty cryptic explanations for how each character got to the moor, the boat in which the first game takes place. It describes how, with graceful restraint, the lady casts the hypnotic spell that keeps the engine running, and that, with long forgotten things from forgotten places, the janitor fled the world and found the moor. But the shoe monster isn't mentioned at all. It doesn't have its own character page, it doesn't even exist on the website, so how are we supposed to understand its purpose? Well, in relation to the other characters, we may be able to gather an idea of the shoe monster's purpose. If the lady runs the moor, letting in guests who gorge on food prepared by the chefs, made from the children that the janitor captures and then eventually recycled guests, the clothes from those hordes of guests will have nowhere to go. Eventually, sure, their clothes will degrade, as cotton only takes about 5 months to decompose. However, their shoes, which would be made from leather, take about 10 to 50 years to decompose. And so that's where the shoe monster comes in. Having nowhere else to dump the guests' shoes as they degrade, since, they're on a boat, the janitor is tasked with throwing them into a pit at the bottom of the moor, causing a shoe pile that is reminiscent and most definitely influenced by the shoe piles found in Nazi concentration camps during World War II. This amount of shoes is so deep even that creatures are able to inhabit it, crawling around in the piles of leather footwear and scattered about leather suitcases, and then when Six finds herself surrounded by the pile in the first game, she has to wade through it like water, all the while being chased by the shoe monster. But this makes sense, doesn't it? The shoes of murdered guests are thrown down here to decompose, just like the shoes of those Jewish prisoners. And then the shoe monster is just there to help speed up the process, right? Maybe it eats the shoes, or uses the leather for something, or maybe whatever it is just like sleeping in a cushy bed of stinky footwear. But the shoe monster doesn't actually seem to care about the shoes. As soon as Six jumps into the pile to get from point A to B, the shoe monster immediately starts chasing her, after being quite dormant. Obviously it's not interested in the shoes, because as soon as a fresh bit of meat jumps in, it's hot on Six's tail, just like all the other enemies in the game. So why is it down here? If it doesn't care about the shoes, what purpose does it have being in the shoes? Well, I have an answer for that you might not like. But first, let's talk about what the shoe monster could be. There are 3 main candidates for what the shoe monster could be, each of them with varying degrees of likeliness. The least likely candidate, but one that I've still seen thrown around a lot as a possibility, is the granny. Undeniably, the granny and the shoe monster do have the same method of chasing the player, swimming their way towards us, whether that be through water or a pile of crusty shoes. But the reason why I believe this is the most unlikely is that when we find the secret eye camera in the Hideaway DLC, we can see, live, a clip of Six in that exact shoe monster room, and this is after we've already killed the granny as the runaway kid. So unless this is the granny's electrocuted corpse acting as the shoe monster, I don't think that's our answer. The second candidate is one of the gnomes. It's not uncommon for the gnomes to find themselves in piles of something, whether that be coal or garbage or whatever this stuff is, and they're definitely small enough to skitter through these boots. But one small issue I find with this solution is that more often than not, the gnomes run away from Six, not towards, so I don't think this works either. The last candidate, and the one which I've seen the most, is a leech. The leeches do have the same path following as the shoe monster, in which they relentlessly chase Six, but one small issue I find with this candidate is that it would be rather difficult for them to maneuver their way through hordes of shoes. Most of the leeches drag themselves towards Six with their mouths, which would be very difficult to do if you're buried under a pile of heavy leather shoes. Not to mention the shoes go flying up in the air as the shoe monster makes its way towards Six, which I don't think the leeches have the strength to do. Even the ones that have legs. Why do they have legs? But then, those are my only 3 candidates. And if none of them work, then what could it be? Well, like I said, I have an answer, but it's going to need a lot of explaining. When we play as the runaway kid in the Little Nightmares DLC, we can find that eye camera in a secret room in the Hideaway chapter. We can find this camera in Six's campaign too, but as the runaway kid's campaign starts just slightly before Six's, this means we can see some of Six's journey on the camera. I mentioned this already, we see her in the room with the shoe monster, wading through the shoes. But as I was reviewing this footage, I realised something. There is no shoe monster. Now I understand what you must be thinking. You've just made this whole theory about a character that doesn't exist? Well, yes, but that's because it goes far deeper than you think. In the Nowhere, everything is essentially part of a dream. And while some of it is tangible, we can touch and manipulate objects in relation to how they would be manipulated in reality as Six, but not everything is real. Six is essentially making up the more in her dream, and so while some of it may be of actual substance in the nowhere, as an alternate reality, some of it can also be altered by her mind, and that's what I think the shoe monster is. It's not on the Little Nightmares website as an official character, it doesn't match any of the candidates for what it could be, and most interesting of all, when you view it on the camera, it's just not there. In the actual shoe monster chase, the shoe monster starts to chase Six just as she's reaching the second suitcase in the pile of shoes. When the runaway kid views Six on the eye camera, she gets well past the second suitcase, and the shoe monster is nowhere to be seen. What I have theorized is that whilst dreaming of the nowhere, much like a Lovecraftian god dreaming a civilization into reality, some of the dream world is tangible, whilst other parts of it are just imagined. The janitor is tangible because we're able to cut off his arms, the lady is tangible because we're able to sink our teeth into her, the chefs and guests are tangible because they can interact with us, and the other kids and gnomes are tangible because not only can we interact with them, but they aren't just exclusive to the moor, they're all over the nowhere.
A second smaller sound appeared. Clicks and murmurs. Then, out of the darkness ahead, they appeared, scurrying so fast I couldn't react. 100 little mushroom fairies, rushing past me in a panic.
However, when it comes to the shoe monster, no hand is visible when it catches us and drags us into the pile. It has no physical form. It doesn't interact with Six outside of the shoe pile, and therefore it is not a tangible part of the nowhere, which can only mean that Six has imagined it. And this is a possibility in the nowhere. We've learnt from Noon in The Sounds of Nightmares that while elements of their exploration in the nowhere from their dreams can have a real existence, like the blob of eyes from the movie theatre in The Sounds of Nightmares, which also exists in the signal tower in the second game.
The projectile I saw first was shaped like a deformed eye. Then, my attention fell to the mass on the floor. A brain? A heart? No. Its muscles pumped and pumped, and its tubes ran into the walls. The voice came both from inside the room and over the PA.
Most of the nowhere can be influenced by thoughts and memories of the children visiting. For example, Noon imagines dresses and toys that she wanted when she was younger, so it's not out of the realm of possibility for Six to have imagined something fake in something that is real like the moor. But then, that leads me to the question, what's real and what's fake in the nowhere? Well, that's a whole lot more complicated. So, if my theory is true, why does Six imagine the shoe monster? Well, I think of it less in relation to the universe of Little Nightmares, but more in relation to the games themselves. Why does the shoe monster work so well as an enemy in the game? Consider what is truly scary to you. What is your deepest, darkest phobia? Is it spiders? Heights? Snakes? The dark? Even if we all have different fears, one thing that scares anyone the most, no matter what, is the fear of the unknown. And I think this is what the existence of the shoe monster plays on. Not just to us, the player, but to Six herself. The best way to create a fear of the unknown, especially in video games, is to not be able to see what is chasing you. We kinda have it with the Granny in the Depths DLC, but even then we still see her spindly hand rise up to grab us from the water. And if we're quick enough in certain scenes, we can also see her oh so gorgeous face. But even when we're able to see an enemy in the game, if there's a first-person chase sequence with said enemy, suddenly it becomes a whole lot scarier. Why? Because we can't see how close it is. Suddenly it becomes unknown. And although Little Nightmares is a third-person game where we cannot escape looking at the wondrous monsters that are hot on our tail, one monster is still invisible, still hidden amongst the unknown, and it's the shoe monster. What this does is make our imagination start to whir. Not only are we worried we might get caught by this gruesome thing, but we also begin to form an image of what it looks like in our head. And it can be anything we want it to be. A spider, a snake, a leech, a gnome, anything. So now, if we break the fourth wall a little bit, Six is doing the exact same thing. You know how I mentioned that a first-person chase is much scarier? That is essentially what Six is experiencing. She can't look back during the chase, she has to focus on the path ahead of her. And so as she's wading through these seemingly harmless shoes, she conjures up what she imagines could be after her. Perhaps she hears a noise, feels movement, Or perhaps she's just so used to being chased by the janitor at this point in the game that she just assumes there must be something after her here too. But because this is her dream, stuck in this hellish landscape of the nowhere, where things you dream can become real, the shoe monster becomes real. And now it's making me wonder once again, what's real in the nowhere? And what's fake? So as this is my first video, I just kind of wanted to take a little bit of time at the end to ask you guys if it's good. If you have any feedback, that would be greatly appreciated. Like on editing style or any of the artwork, I've all done myself. So if you have any feedback, not only on the video editing, but also on the theory, that would be greatly appreciated. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I hope you stick around to see what I have to come.